So my mom can see this?
Hey, do I have to mute you guys? Hello, God bless and welcome. I'm Kevin Haggerty, and this is the Godlogic Project, where we discuss maintaining a Christian worldview in a post-Christian America. I have some really cool guests, some old friends of mine. They hold different worldview than I hold. They are left-wing, and I am pretty much right-wing. So we're going to have a conversation. We're going to give them the floor, let them make their points with almost no interruption from the host. But first, the theme song. Hello, God bless, and welcome. I'm Kevin Haggerty, and this is the Godlogic Project.
Shut up, Kevin.
I'm Kevin Haggerty. That's Mike Houston telling me to shut up, as usual. And in the studio, I have Anthony Fioto. Do you like Anthony or Tony?
I'm Anthony now.
Anthony Fioto. These guys are fancy now. It's not like when we were kids. They're big shots now, so they go by their real names. My name's Kevin, so there's really no, it's Kevin or Kevin. There's nothing exciting about my name. And then Andrew Ferencz.
That's good, man.
And then you want to go by Andrew, because I'm going to accidentally say Andy probably. Because
I won't be mad.
I haven't spoke to you guys in like 30 years, at least 35. How is everybody? Do you want to take a sip from your coffee cup, Tone?
Yes, I do. Thank you very much for asking.
It's a little late for coffee, man. I only allow 2 espressos a day. That's it.
I knows damn well it's not coffee in the coffee mug.
I got a bad ticker, so I got to drink decaf anyway, so it doesn't make a difference. But that's a whole nother podcast. So here's what we do, guys. Generally, what I do on the show is I talk a lot of recovery, I talk Christian topics, and I talk about politics. Generally, the people that I talk about politics with are right-wing guys. These are conservative guys. Of course, those are more the circle I turn in, generally, probably 75 to 25%, 75% conservative, 25%, something like that, 60-40 maybe. So what I wanted to do is have a podcast where you guys can explain your point of view on different topics. And I got to find our list of topics. You guys can deliver your point of view on different topics for an hour, and I will steer the conversation, play devil's advocate, tell you what a conservative might say this or a conservative might say that. That way we can keep the conversation going. But what we want to do really is create an environment where you guys are speaking to the audience, basically. Does that make sense?
Yeah. But I'm going to push back on you immediately, Kevin.
Get me.
Yes. So I don't necessarily identify myself as progressive, although I certainly hold some progressive ideology. And I think that you'd be surprised that we're probably closer on many issues than you think we're going to be.
Well, that's going to ruin our podcast, bro.
Well, potentially, or maybe it would be eye-opening to some of the people on the podcast.
And
right?
that the point of the Godlogic Project is that we can have civil discourse without going straight to name calling and those types of things. So we were talking a little bit off the air why don't I participate in the pissing contests of left wing, right wing. I just can't bring myself to do it consistently anyway. I can do once in a while for fun, or I can really get upset about things sometimes. But consistently, it doesn't get us anywhere. So that's kind of that's kind of where I stand on it. And I'm probably right center myself. I'm not. You guys already know probably I'm not a huge Trump fan. I get pushback from my right wing friends for not being a huge Trump fan. What am I going to do? I call them as I see them, you know.
One of the things you're going to find, Kevin, is that I think I'm more conservative than almost every conservative that I know. At least constitutionally conservative.
Yeah, and that's a big thing. That's a good thing. So to me, Antonin Scalia was a guy that was a literalist, a contextualist for the Constitution. He didn't even consider what he thought they thought when they wrote it. All he wanted to know was what they wrote. I think that's the way to approach the Constitution. Personally, I like that guy. He passed away now, but I like his style. That it's not what you thought they were thinking at the time or anything. What did they write down? You know.
But why can't you be enlightened when the world? You think that was only one point in time when people were enlightened? I mean, we know a lot more today than we did back then.
Yeah, and it could. Here's the thing: you don't want to. I don't think we need to, or we need to be careful breaking too far from tradition, right? So if we go too far off the reservation politically, I think we deflate the value of the Constitution, and a Constitution that served us pretty well now for what 243 years, right?
Well, but I mean, we have a lot of amendments to the Constitution for good reasons, right?
Oh, for very good reasons.
And I don't think we need to veer very far off the Constitution at all. I think what we see today in this administration is gross violations of the Constitution. But so the idea that the Trump administration is conservative is ironic to a certain degree.
Yeah, I mean, he certainly, all of us being from New York, we knew him his whole life, his whole professional life. He was on our local news at least. But politically, he's never been what you would consider a committed conservative on most issues. I mean, he did what he had to do to make money, I think is how I would read it.
Make money and be in the newspaper, right?
Yeah. Remember when he finished the Central Park skating ring? That's kind of when he was on my radar. The first time I maybe heard of him, when he finished that Central Park skating ring under budget and then held the press conferences and made himself famous, remember? That was a long time ago.
Yeah.
I had a neighbor that had a dry cleaning business in Coney Island, and Trump bought the building and started kicking people out. So I knew him back then a little bit through a neighbor whose business was hurt by that moat. I mean, if Trump bought the building, you do whatever you want with it.
Yeah, it's business.
Yeah.
So I gave you guys a list of topics that I kind of put. Now, Francis was supposed to join us, but he's out, I don't know, taking pictures of water buffalo in Wyoming or something. So he couldn't be with us tonight. And he came up with the first topic, which is a little bit broad, a little bit, so we may need to narrow it down a little bit. But he brought up political corruption as a topic he'd like to talk about, and I put it on top of the list. But that is, I mean, we can do a series of podcasts on political corruption. So I don't know, is there any direction you guys want to go particularly with that for, I don't know, 5 minutes, 10 minutes?
Well, I'm a profound believer that people basically, the hypocrisy is incredible, right? So when you say about like corruption, I think that almost all politicians, say and do what they need to do to stay in office. I mean, I see a politician as if he's in office, he's alive. If he's out of office, he's dead, right? If he's in office, he can control money, favors, friends, make decisions. But it's like, if you're out of office, you're fired, right? So these guys in politics, they fight for real. I mean, because it's like, if they're not holding the office, they're pretty much dead, right? So, and so because it's so serious to them, they spend most of their time raising money.
Yeah,
not really talking
trying to get
people.
reelected.
It's the process. It's trying to get reelected, doing favors. But I mean, honestly, if you were suddenly made president, who would you reach out to? You reach out to your friends, your family, the people you know and trust, right? So that's also part of human nature.
Yeah, I would say.
I think about it a little bit differently. So I think the biggest corrupting force in this country coincides with the downfall of every other single superpower in history, which is greed and money. Yeah. And corruption is nothing more than the influence of money into how we govern. And we've had a series of legislative, moves that have made it easier for all sorts of money to flow into politics at the corporate level. And right now the government is bought and paid for, and that's a bipartisan thing. So, and what you're seeing is big giant corporations come in through lobbyists and all this other stuff and buy and change legislation in a way to tip the scales, just keep the money flowing. And then you have all these different people that are just sucking at the teat.
But I think it's been that way since the beginning of the country. I mean,
at least the Industrial Revolution, I would guess, right?
No, I know. Even the Articles of Confederacy. What was going on back then was states were printing their own money, and bondholders were really getting mad that states could print money and pay off bonds with money that might not be very valuable, right? I think the very foundation of this country is really about making bondholders secure. It's about money. I mean, you go into like land grabs. I forget the state that they issued all these this Indian land they gave to people, and it turned out to be like an illegal move, and then they made everybody whole. It's always been the idea that today is more corrupt, more money. I don't think that's true. I think from 1776, money and corruption has been part of the game. It's just how people play it. I mean, there was never a time when it was. It's just a struggle that just goes on.
Yeah.
I think the whole history of this country, you can go from slavery to banking. even the water supply in New York City really wasn't about water. It was about being able to form a bank. I mean, everything is, it's just the nature of people, angling for a bigger piece of the pie.
Is there,
Yeah.
do you think that, Tony, what do you think?
I mean, I agree. It's always been that way. I mean, if you've done any reading about Teddy Roosevelt, he was huge on trying to fix corruption. He came from all sorts of money, and he believed that it was, that the elites and people with money had an obligation to try to level the playing field somewhat. And it was a cesspool, New York, especially back then. But I think it's gotten worse, and I just think it's worse because the universe has grown. It's the United States and capitalism is basically a system of it's never enough, right?
Yeah.
It's never enough. It doesn't matter if you're profitable, you need to be, because the companies feel like they're accountable as shareholders, and that's everything is measured on. So you have these incredibly profitable companies that lay people off.
Yeah.
Just because they need to, show shareholder equity increasing, quarter over quarter, and that's leading to all sorts of disparities in income, and it's worse now than it's really ever been.
Well, yeah, and that's I think a terrible natural byproduct of capitalism is going to be income inequality. Andy, what do you think? I don't think there's any kind of way around that except to do some kind of major reset and start over, but that doesn't make much sense.
Okay, so you got two things just for example, right? We worry about overpopulation in the planet, right? Too many people, more garbage, more water, more food, right? So people worried about overpopulation. Can the planet sustain that many people? And on the other hand, if countries start not growing their population, then it's like, oh, the economy is going to suffer because now you don't have worker replacement. Right. The old people can't be supported by the young people in their retirement. So it's like, depending on who you're listening to, the same exact situation is either a catastrophe or a benefit, right? And so I think fundamentally we haven't really figured out like where we're all headed, as a human race, we'll say, on this planet. Like, what is the goal? And everybody's, it's conflicting, right? I mean, if you slow down economic growth to try to reduce consumption, that'll maybe put people out of work,
Yeah.
And if we overconsume, so it's. I kind of applaud the battle that goes on between the Republicans and Democrats and between CNN and Fox, because I think the only way you actually get to the answer is fighting it out,
Yeah, I would say ultimately, it's become too difficult to get to the truth. So back in the day, I used to flip between CNN and Fox and then try to kind of deduce for myself what the truth might be.
Yeah.
I don't know if I lost heart for the whole process. I was a news junkie till the 2016 elections. After that, I don't believe any of them.
Well, I mean, I put a thing on Facebook today. I was like, I turned on CNN this morning, right? And I like to watch. I can't even get Fox, by the way. I don't have cable, but I can watch it online a little, I guess. And so it was. I forget the woman's name. This was like 6:30 in the morning, and they were reporting, maybe a Camerata or something, that the Democratic governor won, right? And she was gleeful, and I thought, that's like, she's supposed to be reporting news. And instead she's like cheerleading for the Democratic side on TV. Yeah. And but that's not news, right? That's like cheerleading. It's like, what the hell was that about,
Yeah.
I thought that was like inappropriate. It's like why people get turned off, It's just, and then I'm really sad about Sam Shepard, because I think he seemed like a pretty good guy. And everybody, all the Fox people.
Oh, Shepard Smith.
My mom knows, yeah.
Yeah. Tony, what do you think? Anthony.
I mean, I think it doesn't. You can call me Tony. I'm not going to be offended. The bottom line is that we were talking earlier, Kevin, about monetizing and media. I mean, that's ultimately what's happened, right? So these networks are putting out shows to generate money. It's a product.
Yeah.
And there's a balance. So Fox has, a period of time during the day where they have actual news reports. So does CNN, and so does MSNBC. But once you turn into 8 o'clock at night, it's advocacy.
Yeah.
They're catering to an audience. And Kevin, you said something that hit me. You don't trust anybody, right? And that's sad. It really is, because facts do exist, and it's like quantifiable facts that exist.
Yeah.
When we talk about the one of my biggest pet peeves is talking about the Trump economic performance. in comparison to Obama. Now, Trump blasted Obama about job numbers that they were fake for 8 years. And he blasted GDP because it was around 2%, and it was anemic. It was the worst economy in history. And oh, by the way, the deficit at the time, which was, $500 billion a year, reduced from Bush, was backbreaking. You were going to destroy everything. I mean, Obama's destroying. This is the worst economy in history. The market tripled, right? The market tripled. Jobs went from 10% to under 5%. GDP went from nothing to 2%. Those are unassailable facts.
Yeah.
But the thing is,
let me just finish, because Trump's performance is inferior to that. And yet he's referring to it as the greatest economy in all of history.
Well,
GDP is around 2. The jobs have continued on the same scale. Markets all over the place, right? So, I mean, to call one day this is the greatest economy in ever, and this one's anemic.
Well, that's going to be the next guy's going to do the same thing, regardless of if the stock market crashes. He's going to say the last administration crashed it. That's always going to be the case, and I'm not 100% sure how much influence or how quickly a president's tenure has an effect on the economy. So it may take decades before we really find out how things work. But Trump is Trump, and I'm not a huge Trump fan, but I would part ways with you in saying I think he's doing a good job. I think that some of the things he's done I like. I wish he wouldn't tweet, But most of what I think most of the negative I hear about him is kind of trumped up, from pardon the pun.
But the thing about Trump is you can't listen to him for trying to he says whatever he wants to say, regardless of whatever the truth is, right?
Yeah.
He just says whatever he wants to say, and then he knows he gets people spinning about that stuff.
Yeah, and I wonder if he's a genius or if he's a moron. I mean, how's he?
No, I don't know. I knew this kid growing up, and he was what I would call a perpetual liar, right? And we kept him around because he was funny. He would tell his uncle went to the moon and all this stuff. Ask him anything, he'd tell you a story. Trump just says whatever he wants to say, and then the sad thing is that as a leader of the country, there's nobody that can really call him to task for that, right? He's got the pulpit. And so the saddest thing to me is we put a man on the pulpit who essentially just has no compass, just says what he wants to say, does what he wants to do, lies at will, and is, sort of taking it to a new level, right? And I think that's kind of bad because it used to be in the early days, you aspired to be president. You're the smartest kid in the room would be president someday, the most, whatever. I don't know if anybody aspires to be president anymore,
No, I think he, I think
you
got to be crazy. You got to be crazy to want to be president. I mean, I don't know. They all seem to end up millionaires when it's over, but
well,
it can't be worth it.
Right? You write the book, so
yeah, you could write, so you can't, but it can't be. It can't be worth it. I just can't see how it's worth it. Look at how they age, by the way. Every one
Trump
of them.
hasn't aged. I don't think he's aged. He's already. I mean, that's one thing remarkable about the guy is he hasn't dropped
energy, and he's old, and he's got amazing energy level, whatever. But
wow, we go on forever about Trump.
Yeah.
Look, here's what I'll say. Here's the deal about Trump, right? Kevin, you know good people, right? I know you. We know each other long. I mean, I remember hanging out in your parents, parents watching basketball games and stuff. We know what a good person is. We also have grown up knowing what a good leader is, right? When you ask about the qualities of a leader, what's a good leader? It's somebody who's honest, is trustworthy, that has empathy, that has a vision. I mean, there's a million different things. Has a moral compass. And Trump has none of those things. None of them. He is a complete and utter narcissist who is driven only by making decisions and doing things that enrich him in some way, shape, or form, right? And I find it hard to believe that anybody would push back on that. His narcissism is so malignant and so obvious that it's unassailable, right? And that person can't be a good leader. It just can't, because he's going to do what he's doing right now. Every single thing that comes out of his mouth is going to be from the perspective of what makes me look the best.
Yeah.
And people can't trust that. And that's the issue I have with him.
But could we trust Obama when he said things? I mean, or Bush, the second Bush, I mean, they all seem to be. They all
So-
seem to be, in a sense, they're all narcissistic, and it's probably one of the main things. Narcissism drives people to want to be president in the first place, probably.
There's an element of it. I could write down on a piece of paper right now. If I asked you to give me an example of Obama being dishonest, I know exactly what you'd say. I'd write it on a piece of paper. You'd say it, and I'd show it to you. But yeah, I think Obama was a very trustworthy guy. I think he's a decent human being that was driven from a place of wanting to do well. Does he have an ego? Yes. A sense of elitism and could he sound like he was talking down to people? Yes. But I mean, to compare Obama to Trump, no. I mean, Trump, dude.
If I had to pick, I'd still pick Trump. If it was Trump and if those were our two choices.
Give me a good read. What happened so bad during the period of Obama that would allow you to pick Trump over him?
Start off with the apologizing for America around the world. Probably Benghazi would be a big one. The IRS going after his.
Stop you there. Nobody has been more vile about the United States of America than Donald Trump. He's called the CIA Nazis, right?
Mm-hmm.
He went to Putin, and when you're talking about Putin and some of the atrocities he's committed, he was saying, America's not so great. We have tons of blood on our hands. He's talked about every single human being that came before him in the most disparaging of terms. His entire inauguration was basically America's a shithole. Thank God I'm here. What pro-American policies or unapologetic speech has Trump ever?
Well,
He's the most anti-American guy on the planet.
Well, I think he was disparaging towards the political system. I think Trump is a necessary interruption. I think forever now there's going to be kind of a Trump factor. He'll be gone, 1 year or 5 years from now. Eventually, the Democrats will take over power, and just like it always does, the pendulum will swing the other way. But there's always going to be a Trump factor. There's always going to be Trump type of Republicans.
He called the United States a cesspool. He said George Bush went into Iraq for the money. He accused the troops in Iraq of looting the country. Tell me how that Obama's less, more of an apologist for America than Trump is.
But who would pick up the reins for Trump after Trump leaves? Like who? I don't think it's anything that lives much beyond him, right?
I mean,
I think
in terms of the next election.
No, but I mean, he said there'll be this Trump thing going on for the future. I think if Trump lost in 2020, he would probably just go start a TV station or something.
Yeah, but there'll be people there are people right now that are amazingly loyal to Trump. I had a conversation with somebody I won't name, and he works for the government, and he said, I said, I'm not a huge Trump fan. And he was shocked, almost heartbroken, the look on his face that I have a podcast and I'm not a huge Trump fan. Now, I don't think the guy's the monster that everybody makes him out to be, but I think he's like I said, a necessary interruption to a very sick, corrupt political system. That's what I think.
I'm going to challenge you on that. So you think Trump is not corrupt? And I'll just give you just a couple of quick examples of it. I mean, he's got his family, he's got his businesses, which are profiting off of his administration, and he's got his kids in the administration, and he's got 200 lobbyists working for him.
Yeah, well, I'm not saying he's not. I'm not. One of the reasons I'm not wild about the guy is I don't think he is any better than all of his predecessors, whoever will come next. I think he was a better choice than Hillary 3 years ago. I reluctantly voted for him, but I think that the things that he does is no different than the things that all of our politicians does. The difference, it seems, with Trump is he says, "This is how I do it. Screw you." Where the other politicians kind of pretend they're not doing it and do it anyway. Does that make sense?
Yeah, but I disagree with it. I don't remember a president who ever refused to divest from his businesses, which are international, or had their kids in the administration.
Well, Kennedy had his brother in the administration.
His brother was an attorney general. His kids are not. They have no qualifications whatsoever. What is Ivanka Trump's qualification to be in an administration, or Jared Kushner to be running around negotiating Middle East, peace treaties, other than he's Jewish?
I don't know. And again, I'm not a Trump apologist, so I don't think that he is. I will go on record as saying I think he's doing a good job. I thought he would get elected. I didn't think he would get elected, by the way. I thought he would. I was shocked when he got elected, like everybody else. I thought that he would do something bizarre in the first month and they'd throw him in jail or whatever. And now 3 years later, and I'll say this for him, by the way, no president has been under this kind of attack for 3 years. Even if they get him tomorrow, I admire the guy's ability to bob and weave through all this endless attacks he's under.
I think he's lived his entire life like this, Kevin.
Yeah,
this
yeah.
guy who thrives on chaos. You know, he's a guy that, you know, his business model. And so, you know, we talked about this earlier, but I have history with Trump too, in that I was in the golf business and I had an entire team of people that went to go work for him. And I know a lot of people that work for him. He does the same thing all the time.
Yeah.
He capitalizes on his celebrity, so everybody wants to work with him. And then he doesn't pay. And then he doesn't pay, and then he makes people sue him, and that's his business model. And it is
well, that's a very common business model, though. That's not his business model.
No, it's not that common.
It's really not. I've worked for a million different companies. I've never worked for a company that's their model. I'm going to people and try to sue them into paying 10 cents on the dollar.
Oh, I'm talking about vendors suing suppliers and
that's not common.
You owe me $1 million. Well, I'll pay you when I pay you. Well, I'll get a lawyer, and then that'll be part of the expense of working for you.
Usually get that when you get the bankruptcy. You don't get that but if you get a reputation as being, what's amazing is, I guess, how many suckers there are in the world. In most businesses, if you screw eventually your base gets smaller and smaller, where less and less people want to do business with you.
Yeah,
there are always somebody who thinks they can write a better contract or whatever,
And that's the self-correcting of the free market, I guess.
But I mean, it does speak to the character of a person who would go through life that way, right?
Well, I didn't want to just talk about Trump. I kind of figured we'd go here, but I didn't want to just talk about Trump.
Where's your list? Get to the next item.
I'm looking at Medicare for all. What do you think about that? I'm on Medicare, by the way, so it's not bad. Better than Medicaid.
Yes. But usually people on Medicare just want to close the door behind them and kick everybody else out, right?
Yeah, maybe. I don't know. I've only been on, I don't know much about it. Medicare.
Too.
Man, you got so many. That's a very complicated topic of whether Medicare for all is the right approach or not. But whether medicine is a human right or not, I'm not sure I agree with that. But I do know that we don't have a system that's capitalist. Right, you go to the doctor, you have no idea how much it's going to cost. You just get a surprise bill.
No, and you don't care how much it costs. So you go to the doctor endlessly if you don't have a big copay. No sense not going to the doctor for every little ache and pain,
Well, honestly, we go to Columbia all the time for routine things because it's actually better care at a better price. And my wife is from Columbia, so we go down to visit her sister. But even my kids, we go down there and they find all the things wrong the dentist didn't do up here.
Really?
And so the system here, everybody thinks we got the best system. We don't really have the best system. We just pay the most for it. I think and then these days, all the doctors do is just fill out forms. I'm not even sure what they're doing anymore except typing on the computer, asking the same questions over and over again.
Essentially, the insurance companies are making medical decisions. So I've had doctors say, well, I can't refer you to a specialist on a first visit. You'll have to come back in a month, then I'll refer you. The insurance company would never approve it, or it would be a red flag or whatever. So the problem becomes, I think, that the insurance companies, some bureaucrat in Delaware is making your medical decisions where the doctors, they're covering their butts.
Well, so I'll give you an example. I get asthma medicine sometimes. I have this albuterol, right? And albuterol used to be like $5. It's like a thing that people have asthma. Need it, right? Otherwise, they can't breathe. And so the company that marketed it, sells it, got ozone depletion-free albuterol to market with patents, and the price spiked. Some of these drugs I used to pay $5-10 for now, like $500 a month. If you don't have insurance. Yeah. You can buy it in Canada for like $80.
Yeah, it's insane.
That's the system. It's like take advantage of the patent system, take advantage of the FDA. And realize there's very little competition in the fact that people really need this stuff. And by the way, the rest of us will contribute through our insurance policies to getting, I think a lot of medicine isn't really about insurance. Really, it's about a buyer's club, right? Like, if you need the same pill every week, that's not insurance anymore.
No.
Insurance is like when you crash a car and, it's like a risk pool. If you need medicine on a routine basis, that's not insurance. That's just a buyer's club, right? People get together and they pay a lower price. The whole system's kind of broken. It's they figure out how to extract as much money as they can from people.
And that's where regulations come in, and then everybody's against regulations. Anthony, what do you think, buddy?
So it's not really insurance; it's healthcare, right? And providing healthcare to everybody in this country in an affordable way. And one of my complaints about Obama and also kind of an example of how misguided I think the right can be when they try to position him as ultra progressive is the fact that the Affordable Care Act is nothing more than an extension of private health care. It's not a government.
Well, it was an extension of a Massachusetts system just developed by Republicans.
And which was developed by the Heritage Foundation, which Romney ran on, right? I mean, it's a perfect example of how broken our system is, where a Democrat advances a Republican idea and gets lambasted for it, about socialized medicine, death panels and every other distortion of it. But the system doesn't work at all. It's a terrible system. It's not capitalistic. It's not private market. Kevin, you and I, we both have a lot of experience with it, right?
Yeah,
because we both went through a lot of different surgeries. And when you're and I've had exactly what has happened to you, where I have had, my doctor, I've had my doctor and my physical therapist say, you need more therapy. And somebody in Aetna or wherever it was say, no, apologize to anybody from Aetna. It wasn't actually Aetna, but
oh, great! You're gonna get me.
The point is that somebody said you need 25 PT sessions is going to be enough, and you'll be fine. And I wasn't fine.
Yeah.
If you go, forget about the emergency. If you go in for a procedure, you're not going to be on the table negotiating with the doctor. How much is it going to cost to fix me? Oh, by the way, I'm going to get 3 competing bills. And then I'm going to leverage each of them against each other. It's not a true
free market.
It's just not.
What if you had an accident and and a helicopter came,
right, and
you're unconscious, and they take you away, you've never been asked, and all of a sudden now they give you a $50,000 bill, and you weren't even part of it.
Well, do you think the government can pay for health care for everybody?
I think the government. So this is great. So I didn't answer your question. So I believe that Medicare for all would be the preferred system for the country if it was offered. I like what Buttigieg suggests, which is put out competing programs, let private market exist, put this out, and see what happens.
Now that could affect.
Everybody would migrate towards that. But yeah.
So the free market could play a role, and that's not a terrible idea.
You need to have some free market elements in there.
$3 trillion in debt. And we're like, we can't afford that all of a sudden because we're so pragmatic with our money. We know how to allocate. The country spends money on the things that are a priority to it. This goes back to, is healthcare a right or whatever? Your country can be whatever it is. It's like a company you work for. So the United States of America can be a country where every citizen is entitled to healthcare by being an American citizen, if they want it to be that way, like other countries across the world can be. Or it can be a Darwinian fight for your own, and some people have insurance and the others are bilking the system, which is what we have right now.
What if they're not American citizens?
Well, my wife is Colombian, right?
Mm-hmm.
So she sees things that happen that are really bad, like people who are not American citizens get better care for free often than people who live here who are poor don't have access.
Here, you mean, or in Colombia?
There's definitely some broken parts to it.
Mm-hmm.
Should we give illegal immigrants health care?
That's probably a good question.
I think some level of health care, sure.
Certainly emergency room type of stuff. They cut their hand off, we got to do something, right?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, it's I don't know. I mean, if somebody poor and hungry came to you and you had enough food to give them, would you give it to them, or would you just kick them out on the street and let them starve to death?
Well, there you get into, and I don't want to be the conversation, but I would, yes. And the truth is, socialism works on a very small scale. Your family is basically a socialistic structure, right? So there's generally 1 or 2 breadwinners, but everybody eats.
Mm-hmm.
Hopefully, the kids, when they get older, take care of us when we can't take care of them anymore. or put us in a fancy nursing home or something. So I think socialism works on a smaller scale. Everything works on paper till you add humanity into it. I think that's where.
Well, I
where
think you have
the
what I would
wheels fall
call.
off.
I've seen situations like family members who take advantage of other family members who are not like I don't know, they can't seem to hold a job and they always borrow from everybody and all
Yeah,
sort
yeah,
of
yeah,
stuff.
yeah.
So I was always of the mindset of like what I would call a minimum standard, right? That like I wouldn't want to put somebody who didn't have anything into the best situation, but I would give them the minimum, enough to get by, but a motivation to do better, enough health care to avoid the major suffering, but maybe if it's an extremely expensive procedure and it's not necessary, they can go on without it, then no. So I don't think that everybody's got to be treated 100% equal, because if some people take advantage of the system, it's just the nature of people. If you give everything away for free, but at the same time, I think there needs to be a bottom. Like, I don't think you want people to go below a certain level.
Should we
but that bottom shouldn't be comfortable.
This isn't on our list, but should we build a wall?
Wait. I don't want to move away from this because on the issue of healthcare, there are other countries that are doing it in a great way, right? If you're a citizen of the country, you get a base level of care. You can pay up, you can get other stuff.
Yeah.
Fantastic. If somebody, so I had actually happened. One of the guys, I was on a trip, business trip earlier this year, and we were in Amsterdam, and the guy broke his ankle, and they were like, "What do you do?" They went to the hospital. They fixed it. He didn't get a bill for it. That's just the way. This is the way that it was. Now, in this country, and there's going to be people who are listening to this that are going to disagree. We do not. Undocumented workers do not participate in the healthcare system for us. Yes, they might utilize emergency rooms, which is an issue, but they're not leveraging our healthcare system. So I think we can create a healthcare system where citizens are entitled to some base level of healthcare. Undocumented workers can still work into an emergency room, and this crosses into a whole nother discussion. But there should be a pathway for undocumented people to become citizens in this country.
Like we created the situation. They took advantage of it, but we created it. So if they are, it seems to me there's got to be some kind of pathway to citizenship that doesn't short circuit the people that have gone the right route, but doesn't leave these people underground for the rest of their lives, right?
Well, some middle ground, right?
Yeah, there's got to be something. And it amazes me.
But don't you admire people who have enough courage to like pick themselves up, go through a desert, risk their lives, suffer? They have to raise. I mean, it's not an easy process to get here from another country. So I mean, maybe those are the best people to be citizens of our country because
I work construction. I worked construction for like 30 years, so I can tell you that they are the guys that I worked with in construction were whether they were legal or illegal, and most of them were illegal. They worked hard. They did good work. They were reliable, more so than Americans, I think, on a case-by-case basis. When I pulled up and there was a Mexican crew there, I felt good that my day was going to go pretty smooth.
Yeah, so I think that whole illegal immigration thing is actually a test. You can get here and get a job and buy a house and survive. You probably are pretty much the right material to stay here.
Well, yeah, and if they are, the problem is I have a friend that came from Nicaragua and she was very excited. She went through the process while I knew her, and she texted me her standing there having gotten pledged in with her document and all that, and she was very excited about it. But for people like that, it's not terribly fair. But we're not going to unring the bell. We got to fix it somehow. So a pathway to build a wall, pathway to citizenship, and control the borders a little more. I think it's a problem that we can solve.
Well, you look at in Boston in the 90s, a lot of Irish people were coming over, right, working in bars, illegal Irish people. And as soon as Ireland got better, they all went home.
It's okay when Irish people do it.
Okay. Well, they didn't want to be here anymore, actually. They missed the nice Irish weather and the nice Irish beer.
Well, I know a lot of guys that made good money here. My Mexican friends would all live in the same house. They'd live very cheaply, bring lunch. Yep. They don't buy lunch, that kind of stuff. They would send their money home. They'd be here for 5 years, and ultimately, after 5 years, be retired in Mexico. Their wife and their kids were still in Mexico.
Yeah, they'd buy a house, buy some land, put some money away.
So it's but when you get into the guys that choose a life of crime instead, then we got a bigger problem, I guess. But that goes for anybody.
I think, Kevin, the bottom line here is that if we really, really wanted to address the issue of undocumented workers working in the U.S., we'd be going about it 180 degrees differently, which is go after corporations and people that hire. Because undocumented workers only come here to work. So if you penalize the people who hire them, then the situation goes away completely. That's it.
Yeah.
Problem solved. But we don't do that because of what we were talking about earlier around corruption, which is because we have companies that are buying influence and people like, slave labor. Trump loves slave labor. He has, the hypocrisy of this guy who's got, undocumented workers working in his places while he's ranting about building a wall.
Yeah. Well,
the only thing about the wall, you guys didn't read the news the other day? They cut through the steel slab with $100 saw, and because the slab is so tall, it's easy to push, right? Because you get a lot of leverage, and so $1 billion wall taken down by $100 hand tool.
Yeah.
The thing about any kind of physical structure, this is like the nature of science and understanding. Defense cost $1 billion, doesn't move. Offense is just creativity. How can I defeat this thing? And you got all the time in the world to study it and figure out the weakness spots, and so it costs a lot more to defend. So I think a wall is not necessarily a practical, sensible thing, and it does a lot of harm to the environment. It cuts off migration for animals. It separates populations that live in close proximity and stuff like that.
Well,
I don't know. I think it's a bad thing.
Well, eminent domain, running it through people's backyards.
Yeah.
That's their tough luck. You shouldn't have moved. You shouldn't have bought a house on the border of Mexico.
There you go.
Well, some of them are indigenous people that didn't choose to. They didn't buy the land. It was their land for before America.
So we kind of was immigration. Immigration was way down on the list, but we just used immigration. How about we're going to go over an hour, I think. How about gun control? What do you guys? You both live. You live in Jersey and you live in Massachusetts. That are both strict gun laws there. Is that true? Yeah,
we have very strict gun laws here. I like to shoot guns, but I wouldn't take one home.
Yeah.
So I go to New Hampshire and just go to the range with my wife. If we were down in Florida, I let my daughter shoot a machine gun. I have nothing against guns, but the problem with guns to me, I think everybody talks, if I had a gun in my house, I'd be less safe, right? If I pulled a gun out on a criminal, there's a pretty good chance that they'll probably end up using the gun, killing my family. So I don't think most people really know how to use them. I think that it's just a fantasy,
Sure.
Yeah, same kind of thing about offense, defense too. I mean, that kid that shot everybody, it took him 1 minute to kill how many people, and then they did shoot him.
Yeah.
But I mean, but at the same time, the genie's out of the bottle in our country, and what are you going to do? I mean, there's so many guns, you're never going to get them out of everybody's hands. So,
what do you think, Tom?
So I agree, especially with the last thing Andy said about just 300 and something million guns in the country. I also think Jim Jeffries, the comedian, has it exactly right when it comes to American guns. Like all of the arguments about why I need to have semi-automatic weapons and all the other stuff is bullshit. We fucking love our guns. Makes us feel really powerful. It's awesome, man. It's like it's a cult thing, right? So undoing it is unringing that bell. To your point, is a very arduous task. Like, I'm never going to be president of the United States. So we don't have to worry about this. My own personal opinions. I mean, guns are legal. I could own a gun. It's never appealed to me in the slightest. I have no interest in it. I don't understand why anybody needs these weapons that can mow down, armies of people in 30 seconds. Why does a citizen need that? Are we doing battle? Are you going to use it hunting? Is it, are you going to be attacked by a tribe of deer? And all of the arguments around it are nonsense to me. Just being honest about it. It makes you feel powerful. I've been playing, Tour of Duty forever, and it makes me feel like a Superman or whatever it is. But you don't need that. So I don't think you should get rid of all the guns. People want to hunt, let them go hunt. Let them have hunting rifles. They want to go shoot guns in a range, go shoot guns in a range. But as far as owning some of these weapons that are mowing down people, having armor-piercing protection and armor-piercing bullets and gun vests to protect themselves, like so they can walk in like they're a soldier. I just don't get it. And the idea that just because the United States is the only country in the world that has these mass level of killings on such a regular basis, and you have more guns than anybody by far, it's a coincidence, is nonsense. Of course they're related to each other. So yeah, something should be done with it.
Well, the guns have been here a long time. The shootings are pretty new.
Yeah, but not these kind of weapons.
Well, the
You know,
70s, the AR, if you're talking about an AR-15, which is semi-automatic, you're not allowed to have an automatic weapon without a special license, but
Yeah.
they've been around.
They're almost automatic weapons. I mean, like, they're firing. I mean, you're firing so quickly that what's the difference? Like,
Well, most guns, you realize most guns are semi-automatic. A revolver is a semi-automatic.
Yeah. I've been lectured about this a million different times.
Yeah.
So I totally get where you're going with it. But the bottom line is they can mow down a lot of people really quickly, right?
Well, yeah. I mean, if you got a magazine with 30 rounds in it and you can drop it and reload it, I mean, people train at that. I trained at that when I was in bodyguard school for handguns, not for ARs, but and they've, the average Glock is, Glock 19 is 15 rounds. So I can get off 9mm rounds, so a little different.
The guy in Vegas made his own bump stocks, right? So
yeah. So here's the thing. The Center for Disease Control in, I don't want to say 2013 or something like that, came out with the numbers that something like 38,000 people are killed by guns every year, and something like 300,000 violent crimes are prevented by legal gun ownership. It just seems to me if there's 75 million gun owners and 300-something million guns, and the guns are the problem, we would have a much bigger problem. Doesn't that make sense? We don't. I mean, in the scheme of things, it's not a huge. It's heartbreaking, but it's not a huge statistically.
I don't think so at all. I think that we have a massive gun problem, and we have a massive number of people dying from guns all the time. And this idea that you're in the okay corral and you may be thwarting off some of that through more guns, and I mean, what do we? Just from a common sense standpoint, wouldn't we do that if there were no guns?
Would it be better if there were no guns?
Yeah, no guns.
Well, if nobody had a gun, I don't know. Then we'd be killing each other with knives and vans
and you think
bombs.
You kill the same amount of people with a knife. No, killing somebody with a knife is completely different than pulling a trigger on somebody. Which is why almost everybody commits suicide does it with a gun. It's less personal. It's easier. You pull a trigger.
There's no going back. Yeah, it's not slow.
You can't. How are you going to motivate? Like, yes, people have flown planes into buildings and blown up things, but there's a reason why people walk into a movie theater or fire on a crowd of people with a gun, because it's easy, and that's what the guns are designed to be.
I'm looking at the death rate for guns. Hawaii is 2.5, Massachusetts 3.7, New York 3.7. Then you get down to the bottom: Alaska 24.5, Alabama 22.9, Montana 22.5. So that there seems to be a kind of a correlation between places that are, super pro gun and not, in terms of what the death rate is, right?
Well, but the death rate isn't a homogeneous number. That breaks down. That 38,000 number that the CDC came up with. 18,000 of it was gang violence, and then another chunk was suicide. So you can't really count suicides as gun violence because they'll kill themselves one way or another.
Maybe not.
For an honest gun owner is not. Members of the NRA are not likely to go on mass shootings. I don't think they ever have.
Of course they're not.
Why?
Of course.
So everybody should join the NRA then.
Or we got a mental health problem.
Then why would we arm a country with a mental health problem?
Well, the country's already armed. I don't think you could unarm it.
Right. So, so basically we say we're fucked, right? I mean, we have all these guns, we have all this mental, health issues, and nobody wants to do anything because we've done no legislation at all in the last 3 years. Maybe even this universal background check stuff, and Trump is up there, and I'm not trying to make about Trump exclusively, but he's the president, and he said a lot of different stuff, and he's gone back on it. But why? Because the NRA goes back to corruption, it goes back to money, and the NRA said, no, you're not going to do that.
Yeah. Well, they do have a lot of political power, like labor unions, and everybody has it goes back to the corruption, right? They tend to make the decisions for the guy with the bucks, because these people need to get reelected in 2 years. They got to start campaigning again, right?
Let me see a very simple my very simple perspective. Kevin is a very simple guy. I think our world, our country, is worse with more guns than less guns.
Statistically, it doesn't bear out, though.
I think that's bullshit. I think if we had a country with no guns, if you look at us compared to other countries that have solved this issue, like Japan and Australia, it's not even close. Yes, people will kill people with knives and rocks and forks and spoons and obesity, but they're not going to walk into a theater and mow your kids down.
Right. All right. The next topic is from the Democratic debates, the Electoral College. Every candidate seem to want to eliminate the Electoral College. What do you guys think?
I think we should live in a democracy, the will of the people. I think that I think Electoral College should go. You know.
So do I, and I think this is one of the areas where, when we talked about it earlier, Kevin, when we talked about being a constitutional conservative, this is a workaround. This was a trade-off made to states early on. The bottom line is that we're living, and it should. I don't know why every conservative's against it or every Republican's against it, because it only means they think that they don't think they have the numbers or the majority.
Well,
this should not be a partisan issue.
It would definitely make campaigning more interesting, because right now campaigns can focus on like 3 states.
Yeah. I mean,
nobody comes to Massachusetts to campaign.
Well, the opposite would be true, Andrew. If we didn't have the Electoral College, they wouldn't have to go to Kentucky, or they'd go to Florida, California, New York, Texas. They go to the places where the most people are.
Why should they
they can go to anywhere they can get votes, right? I mean, any place they can get votes.
They get a disproportionate voice in the election, and that is undemocratic. And that is, I don't say that as a partisan position. I say that as a logical position. The same reason that Trump says he didn't campaign hard in New York and California, there were Republicans there.
But he knew he was going to lose there anyway.
Right. So that makes the thing a farce. It's like gerrymandering, just to a certain degree.
But even though but there may be more people in California. I mean, if Trump would won over like 1% more of California, I mean, that might be huge for him, right? So
in a popular vote, which is what his contention was.
Well, it seems to me that if we went true democracy instead of a republic, and we just eliminated the Electoral College, we would be in position for a kind of a mob rule type of mentality. So no.
First of all, removing the Electoral College does not turn a republic into doesn't change you from being a republic. You're still.
We're not a mob when we vote for the governor of Massachusetts, right?
It is a complete workaround. Look, a democracy is a democracy. People vote; they get and every vote counts. It would encourage more people to vote, especially in the states where they don't vote right now, and that would apply to both Democrats and to Republicans. I don't understand why Republicans think that this is some land grab by Democrats, unless you think that the numbers you don't have enough votes.
Well, I can tell you why, because the Democrats didn't care about the Electoral College till they lost in 2016. So it looks like sour grapes still from 2016.
It just wasn't a topic. You could have asked me this question at any point. And I've been a registered Republican. I've been a registered independent. It makes no sense to me whatsoever. This is a very common sense issue. We live in a country with people. Everybody, you want people to vote, let them vote. People don't vote in states where they think their vote's not going to matter. That depresses the vote. And that makes no sense to me whatsoever. And the only reason Republicans push back on it against it is because they have policies that don't appeal to everybody, which would force Republicans to make more moderate policies and address some of the Democrats. And then they won't have to worry about this shit.
Well, I think.
Do you guys ever see the Irish system or hear about the Irish system? I think it's the Irish system, where you vote for number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and it makes for a much more interesting election.
So they get weighted, like you vote for them.
Well, what happens is, like, if your number one choice doesn't make the cut, it goes to your number 2, and so on, and so then you got to distill it down until somebody wins, and it tends to get more people involved, more people running. Like we wouldn't have to have this Democratic primary runoff at all, and then and it actually turns out in the end that the winner has actually the most, because maybe you're kind of like not 100-0, right? Maybe you're like 59-49, and but what ends up happening is you have to pick somebody, right?
Yeah. Well, and we always seem, as far as as long as I can remember, we always seem to be darn near 50-50 in our national election. So everybody seems like half the people are on the left, half the people on the right. And it seems like it's been that way for 60 years. It always seems to be very close. Does that make sense? Yeah. Insanely close, considering. But you and the three of us live in I don't know, Massachusetts got a large population, right? Or no? Just in Boston, really?
No, it's not too big.
So I live in Florida, so I live in a big state. You live in a big state, so we would get our way anyway, I guess. But could we then impose our will on Massachusetts, New Hampshire, Montana, I guess it.
I think ultimately it would. So from if I'm a Republican and you went to the Electoral College, it would force Republicans in states like New Jersey to come out and vote, even though they think they may lose, and that's what democracy is.
And it might, it would help in that we're apathetic.
I think ultimately it would. So from if I'm a Republican and you went to the Electoral College, it would force Republicans in states like New Jersey to come out and vote, even though they think they may lose, and that's what democracy is.
And it might, it would help.
Purple, and it's going to come down to Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, Florida,
5
whatever.
states every year, every
That's
4
not
years.
the way it should be. Iowa.
Well, how about this? We're going to run out of time here. So we'll finish like this. Do you guys? I'll ask you this: who should I vote?
Controversial topics. You need a controversial topic.
We need a controversial topic.
Yeah.
The next show we're gonna do a regular segment called. I'm thinking of calling it "Out of Left Field," the progressive perspective, or "Coffee with Communists." Which one do you prefer?
So the thing that you
Look, I can't grab you through the.
we got
Watch my neck. You bend my rods.
Exactly.
So here's the problem. You guys, because of the kinds of posts that Tony and I put on Facebook, you think we're kind of rabid, but we're not really rabid,
I think you are. I'm surprised you're not.
I just like to blow off steam.
Well, I can tell you, and Tony will probably testify to this, before the election, I was putting stuff up just to upset people. And when I realized after the election, the next day I realized how passionate people really were, and I was somewhat apathetic about it. I realized that that's just making matters worse. So I as soon as the election went by, I kind of shut my mouth and stopped.
I'm very anti-meme. There was somebody posted something yesterday that was like very pro-democratic or pro-liberal, and it was something that made the impression that it was recent news, but it was actually like a year ago, and everybody's like, "Oh, that's disgusting, that's terrible," and it's like, it's just a meme,
And you got to look.
So many, I like to just blast holes in just simple-minded ideas,
People put up news clips that are 5-7 years old, like it just happened yesterday, or the article doesn't even match the headline, or there's really no article. It's an amazing headline, and then I read it, and there's nothing to read. It's all.
Well, and the problem with that is that there's lots of people posting stuff like that they're posting stuff that they're not even reading.
Yeah.
So you have this blasting of like information. It's so high level that if you can question and challenge me on ideas. I will not offer an opinion on something that I don't think I know a reasonable
at least
amount
a little
of,
bit, yeah.
Right? That's just the way that it is. And I find as it relates to politics, people are not adverse to doing it, especially in places like where we came from. New York and Staten Island. People know almost nothing, but they'll hang it out there like with these big, walls, like they know exactly what they're talking about. When they're challenged on it, they don't care. And the problem with that is that's what Trump does. This guy you can't drill down on anything with him other than throw a superlative at you about like healthcare. We talk about healthcare forever, right? The Republicans had everything and they couldn't come up with a plan. Nothing.
Yeah.
Well, because any plan that they would have come up with would have kicked them out of office.
The reason they couldn't come up with a plan was the only fucking plan they ever came up with was the ACA, and Obama did it and they challenged it. That's the reality of it.
And that is
they can't touch it.
That is, but that's both sides. That is the political process in a nutshell. Is that they oppose things because the other person's for it. Like they were for it until their opponent was for it. Now all of a sudden they're against it. It's just absolute insanity. So we got to do this again because I came up with. I'd like to do a whole show just on the media, but there's a lot of things I still want to talk about. But I need you to give me advice, right? Because I'm just a hillbilly living in Florida, doing whatever Florida people do, shucking corn. We don't have corn here. Wrestling alligators.
Getting a great
overstock.
Who do I vote for president? If just imagine everybody was still was on the table from the election.
Elizabeth Warren, definitely.
Pete Buttigieg.
Pete Buttigieg. What about Tulsi?
I don't know much about her.
She's hot.
Not mine. Not my I like Buttigieg. Buttigieg, I line up really well with.
Actually, who I really like is Yang, but I don't think he stands a chance.
Well, he asked the question hypothetically, like everybody had a chance, right?
Yeah, like everybody has a chance. Who do you think is the best candidate?
Mayor Pete would be President Pete.
Who do you think can beat Trump right now?
All of them.
Every one of them depends. If the Democrats don't do what they did with Hillary Clinton, which is, the Bernie Sanders, when his faction sat out,
don't alienate people.
If turn out, any Democrat will beat Trump.
Don't alienate the people.
Do you think they haven't?
Yeah, I mean, it's just about turnout.
Yeah.
So this debate is both ways, right? I had a buddy of mine who's a Virginia Republican guy. He's a very pragmatic guy. Can't stand Trump. He says, he considers himself to be more independent. He wants somebody in the middle. He wants like a Biden sort of a guy. I understand the logic of that argument. I also have really progressive friends like Neil Donahue, who you guys know. I'm not that progressive. I'm not. There's lots of issues I have with some of those issues. But his whole thing is we need a revolution, and that candidate's going to mobilize the Democratic base. And I will be honest with you, I don't know.
Well, so Beto wouldn't have been your guy then.
I don't think Beto just wants to be president. I don't think he's really got anything else going for him other than saying he wants to be president.
He's just out, smoking doobs and riding a skateboard and thinking about being president, bro.
I think, he just like woke up one day, had a dream, said I should be president. I'm going to try to be president.
Well, I bring him up because he said, hell yeah, we're going to take your guns. And he also was going to go after churches that don't do same-sex marriages. So I thought that was pretty extreme. I think that those are type of things that will, I don't think would ever fly in America.
Yeah, I think you're right.
So do you guys want to do this again sometime? We're at a little over an hour now, and nobody watches for the whole hour.
I got to go. It's late here.
I got to make sure AJ's done his homework, which he probably hasn't.
Do it again.
Oh, I
Bye-bye, man.
I appreciate you guys for being on.
Thanks for having us.
All right.
Take care.
See you.
Bye, man.
Well, guys, that was the show for tonight. If you I haven't gotten a chance to see the comments. This is a little bit odd format doing the remote, but I'm going to look at the comments. I'll reply to the comments. If you haven't yet, please subscribe to the Godlogic Project. And if there's anything I can do for you personally in ministry or recovery or anything like that, email me at godlogicproject@gmail.com. If I can help, if I have local resources, and I do, I'll put you in touch with them. What else? Subscribe to the channel. No one told you they love you today. God loves you. So do I. Receive that. Be blessed. And we'll speak soon. Thank you. Thank you for supporting the Godlogic Project. And if no one's told you they love you today,